Hi everyone, Sarah here from Sarah Homfray Embroidery with another little Chit Chat Tuesday for you, and I thought this week I would tell you about my weekend. So I went off down to Cambridge, the city of Cambridge, with my sister Caroline, who some of you may know on this channel as the Timber Embroiderer. She's done a few videos on that amazing technique if you want to go and check those out. And her and I went down to see an exhibition. So we went to the Fitzwilliam Museum in Cambridge to see the exhibition Made in Egypt. So this is all about the ancient Egyptians and how they made the things they made. So it's sort of focusing in on the artisans and the craftspeople, which I thought was an unusual take on it. Often you get the grander picture and how it sits in history, but they actually looked at the makers and how they made these amazing things that they made. So we got some drawing in there. There was some glassware. They did some weaving, some basket making, some painting, and it just looked at all of these different processes and what was involved in them and how they made them. So I guess the kind of idea of doing this video is just to show you can get your inspiration from other places. So I didn't go to see anything specifically embroidery related. I just went to have a look at this exhibition, but also we had a look around Cambridge as well. It's got loads of museums and Cambridge is beautiful and magnificent architecture, so there was a lot there to inspire. So I just thought I'd take you on a few of those things and just show you a few things that caught my eye over the weekend. So let's go back to the exhibition. I've been trying to see this exhibition for a while and I wasn't very well, and it got put off and now it's nearly closing. I thought I'd better get my finger out and get down to Cambridge and go and see it. So all about the artisans of Egypt. So I'm going to pull a few things out that I thought were interesting. Just got them on my screen. If you're wondering why I'm looking over here, it's written on my screen so I can remember what I want to say. So this first thing I wanted to show you was this process of drawing, and it's got these little animals on this grid. So there's a little cat at the top there, and you can see how it's done on a piece of stone. So probably for a wall painting, for an image onto a wall, and they've gridded it. So put this grid across it and drawn this cat on it, and what you can do is you can transfer that grid to the surface that you want to paint on, and as long as you put the same number of boxes, you can just transfer the lines directly from one to the other. So a really old-fashioned way of copying something if you didn't have a photocopier, which they didn't in Egypt, in ancient Egypt, but you can still use this today. And sometimes I use it for something if I want to enlarge an image, and you just make the new box the size you want the whole image, and then you copy each box across. So whatever line is in a particular box, you copy it into the same box, corresponding box on your new surface, and then you can transfer your design across. And I thought it was wonderful that they had this little design of these animals on a grid, and showed you this process of how they did it. So these ancient techniques still work really well to get today, and I just thought that was fascinating to see that. One of the things that's really fascinating in this exhibition is just how old everything is. You can't really get your head around the dates of this stuff. So I'm going to show you this little fish. So this fish is made out of glass. I'm going to put him up over here so you can see him. I'm going to read the description of it that was next to it, and the age. So this is a glass vessel in the form of a fish. Bottles in the shape of fish were popular at this time, possibly as cosmetic containers. What else does it say? So bodies made out of blue glass shaped around a mud core and later removed. So it is actually a usable thing in this beautiful design of this fish. And it's 3,500 to 3,320 years old. It survived. And I just think it's astonishing when you look at these things and what they were making all of those years ago, and that they've survived. And it's just quite amazing, really. And this glass as well, it's, you know, obviously very breakable, and it's really amazing condition for 3,000 plus years old. Tail is solid glass. The fins are made of rods of coloured glass. Dorsal fin is particularly fluid shape. Mouth and cheeks are outlined with yellow glass, and their eyes are white circles with swirls of black. So much detail, absolutely beautiful. And there was lots of glass things as well. There were some glass vessels, really delicate ones that had survived too, which is astonishing. So really quite inspired by the glass work. So they did some basket weaving as well, very super fine basket weaving. This is what it looks like here. Beautiful little baskets, kind of about this big, I suppose, handheld ones. And I've had a go at basket weaving a couple of times. I've done one recently, and my basket was not very delicate and not great. Just really hard process to do. You have to be quite strong with it. It's quite it takes up quite a lot of muscle power, actually. It's quite surprising how much my body ached afterwards when you're sort of I guess when you don't know how to use your materials properly, maybe that's what I'm trying to say, and you're kind of working a bit against them rather than with them, which is exactly the same for embroidery. If you battle with your needles and your equipment, it's a lot harder. So I appreciate what goes into making these baskets and these beautiful fine Egyptian ones. So of course I loved the linen that they had on display, this absolutely incredible linen dress that was actually standing upright, and I really peered at it closely to see how they've done it, and they've got some sort of netting underneath and they fixed it, but there was no sign of any stitching, so I don't know how they did that. It was magic. So let's see how old the dress is. So the dress, 4,500 years old. This linen dress. The weaver who made this dress has created the skirt using a single piece of linen turned 90 degrees. So instead of going down and you sew two pieces together like that, they've gone round, and the seam was down the side, and they've kind of done a sort of open seam and a kind of tassely edge down the side. So really unusual way of using the linen. And then two straight pieces that go up over your shoulders and down the back. Exactly the same on the front and the back. So I'm guessing it didn't matter which way you put it on. Don't know why it was the same on the front and the back. Obviously a lot of holes in it at 4,500 years old, but still incredible, and very thin and very long. And it found in a coffin. Dress was found inside a woman's coffin, but she wasn't wearing it from what I understand, so I'm not sure why it was in there. Was it more of a, was it that you couldn't walk in anything that long? So was it that long because it sort of wrapped around her? Not really sure. But 4,500 years old linen tunic. Wow. So they had some other pieces of linen as well. Linen bandage with fringing and a border decoration from a royal burial. 2,900 and about 3,000 years old for that. It was super fine. If you try and find some really fine linen these days, it's really difficult to find it, and this was just super fine linen. Linen bandage with fringing and a piece of very finely woven linen, and they also had a piece of flax as well, hank of flax fibre, possibly 3,800 years old. Obviously the original fibre that you make the linen out of. So to see these sorts of processes and the materials that they used to make these fabrics, and how fine these fabrics were, couldn't get over how fine they were and how old they were and the condition that they were in. So really wonderful to see some actual fabric from this period as well. So I love painting too, and I love pigments and anything pigments, and I was hoping when I went in there would be some pigment in there, and there was a few things on where they got their pigments from, and pigments specific to Egypt as well. They would make their own, and they were called Egyptian blue and Egyptian green. No such thing as Egyptian blue and green. It was something that they made themselves. And this wonderful Book of the Dead scroll here with these incredible paintings on them, and these are super fine as well. They're super small. I've got a close-up of them here, but this is a bit misleading because they were a lot smaller than that. And look at this white, to get this really solid white colour on this papyrus. Incredible in the details in it, and they would actually blank the colours in, so you sort of do a solid area of colour and then put the outlines in afterwards, which is quite an interesting way of working. And this whole scroll, it was absolutely beautiful. A lot of it missing, but the paintings along the top were quite intact, and you could see this story across this scroll. So of course they've got some painted Egyptian coffins as well. You can't have an exhibition about Egypt and not have a coffin in it. And it was interesting with this that there was one there, they said, oh, this painter wasn't very good. His paint had run a little bit, and he'd clearly reached over this coffin and painted as far as he could, and then gone round and painted the other side, which was really funny. And I love that you can tell how somebody made something by looking at the paint and peering at it. And we've been doing that with my samplers recently, having a really close look and a look at the back. How did they create this? What did they do? In what order? What materials did they use? So I just love that they could see he wasn't very good because his paint had dribbled a bit. But then there was this fascinating one as well, and they obviously understood the difference in the artisans for this one, because the detail on this was stunning. And it's some sort of relief called cartonnage, which is kind of a linen soaked in something, and then they kind of stick it together and you can kind of carve out of it. I'm sure that's what it was. And then they do these reliefs on it, and then they paint the reliefs, and then you've got gold on it as well. So many different processes going on. Just think, how did they find out all of these different processes? And the work on this one was particularly stunning. No running paint on this one. So really interesting to see the different experiences of the artisans as well, and a good one versus a not so good one, which I think is a good lesson to us all. You know, we all have to start somewhere. We can't all be brilliant and amazing. So interesting to see the comparison between the different artisans. So that was a really great exhibition. It's only on till the 12th of April, I think. So if you want to see it, you have to get in quick. So I've nearly missed it. But the museum is incredible as well. Lots of other stuff in the museum. The museum is free, as I've mentioned before. Most of our museums in the UK are free to go in, which is incredible source just to go in there and wander around and look at these incredible paintings and works of art. So what else? So the museum itself is a work of art. So this is the entranceway to it. Every little bit of it's covered in something. There's tiles on the floors, or there's carvings. Sorry, the cat on my lap has just gone. And statues, and the ceilings are all moulded, and just not a bit of it that's not covered in something. So the entrance itself is spectacular. And the Fitzwilliam actually has a collection of embroidery samplers. It's got over 300 samplers. It had 2 bequests left to it from 2 different people who'd collected these samplers. And can you see any of them? No, you can't. They're all in storage, which is gutting. I knew they were in storage, they've been for a while, and the little gallery where they were displayed is now been turned into something else, a learning centre or something like that. So you can't actually see them, and they've got 300 samplers, and it's just like, it's gutting to know that they're in a building somewhere and I can't have a look at them. They did do an exhibition on them a few years ago now, 2017, something like that. They did this exhibition, Sampled Lives, Samplers from the Fitzwilliam Museum. So I have got a book of them, and it's obviously got brilliant pictures in it. Really close-up pictures, I can see that really closely. But it's not like seeing the real thing, is it? To see the actual stitches and the conditions of the materials and these things these women stitched. So I can see them in a book, can't see them in the actual museum, which is a real shame. They also got them online. We talked about online embroidery collections before. We've got a whole video with some resources in there, and there's some more resources underneath because you helped me with that one and you told me about other things that I haven't seen. So you can check that out. I'll put that up at the end. And you can go see that video, and the list of resources also on the website as well. So you can go and have a browse at all these amazing embroideries in collections all over the world from the comfort of your own home. But it is interesting, I thought, that the gallery that these were in was the one that was shut. So with all the things in the museum, it's like, what, we need a room for our learning resources. What should we do? We'll take the embroideries out. We'll put them away. Why not take something else out and put them away? So it's interesting. It was the embroideries that got shelved and had to go back into storage. I don't know if there's a good reason for that, or if it's just, I don't know. But a bit of a shame not to be able to see those, but you can see them online, which is wonderful. So we went out and about in Cambridge as well after spending a little bit of time in the Made in Egypt exhibition. And Cambridge, famous for its university, founded in 1209, the university in Cambridge. So lots and lots of history there, some stunning architecture. The colleges are amazing. Everywhere you look, there's just stunning buildings and all sorts of carvings. And I don't know what half of it is. I don't know all these places, but beautiful colleges and beautiful architecture all throughout the town. The most famous probably being this one, King's College. You might know the chapel here, famous at Christmas time for carols at King's. It's on the telly every Christmas, and they do a carol service there, and it comes from King's. And there was a massive queue outside, and we're like, what are they all queuing for? And they were queuing to go in the chapel, so you can go in and have a little look around. We didn't do that, didn't want to stand in the queue to see that, but stunning buildings. So it has a river running through it, Cambridge, the River Cam, so bridge over the River Cam, Cambridge. Wonderful place just to go and chill out. And despite being March, the weather was glorious, and we went and sat down by the river in the sunshine, and we had some lunch down, sat on the grass and had some lunch with loads of other people. They were all doing it too, and you could sit watching the river. And there's lots of punt boats, very famous for its punting. So you get a big long stick and you propel yourself along with a big long stick. And for the young lads who were doing that and taking people along the river, that looked amazing. They looked really professional. That's it. So very famous for that, and the mathematical bridge as well is quite famous. So the mathematical bridge first built in 1748, and a masterclass in 18th century engineering. Lots of maths in this bridge, obviously, called the mathematical bridge. But you can replace individual bits of it without taking a whole bridge apart. which is amazing. So they have been doing that, which is why I said first built in 1748, because they have replaced lots of bits and kept this bridge going. So from an old piece of art to a new piece of art, this is the Corpus clock. So I'm going to have to read this. A piece of art and a clock at the same time features a grasshopper on the top called a chronophage, which literally means in Greek time eater. So he's kind of like a grasshopper creature, and he makes this big gold disc go round, and he's sort of eating at it, and it goes round as he eats it. And it's constantly moving, but it has no hands, this clock, so it's got little LED lights for hours, minutes and seconds, and they flash and they go round. You to tell the time by it, but it's only actually accurate once every 5 minutes for some reason that I'm not quite sure, but really quite amazing. Lots of people blocking up the road looking at the clock. So nice to see some modern things as well amongst all of the really old stuff. So tons of museums in Cambridge. So the museums are connected to the faculties of the university, and they're very accessible to the public. They're all for free, of course, and but they're not sort of quite so academic now. Once upon a time they would be the collections for the different faculties, but now the public can go in and you can just go and visit them for free like everybody else can. And incredible, like loads of museums. It's just how there's so many museums in a square mile, it's ridiculous. So I wanted to go particularly to the Zoology Museum, and I love this kind of museum. I was trying to think why I love this kind of museum, but I think it can study the thing that I'm interested in, so nature and animals. I love animals and nature, and I can study them close up, I guess, and just see things that I wouldn't be able to see in any other way. So this is one of my favourite things in the Museum of Zoology, some of our closest relatives. And I loved the way they had displayed it. The lighting on it was stunning, and you've got all these shadows of these bones behind it, and it looks like there's twice as many, and really, really incredible. And if you're ever drawing or stitching animals, what's going on underneath is really important. So the underlying structure is really important. If you can understand that and get that right and get the bones in the right place, and the rest is in the right place. So if you've ever drawn something you think, oh, it looks a bit odd, or that doesn't look quite right, probably because it's not got the right skelly underneath it, basically. So if you're interested in drawing and stitching animals, then it is worth looking at how to draw this structure underneath, how to draw their skeletons, because it will help you understand what it is that you're making and how to represent it accurately. So you've got some amazing bird collections in this museum as well. Obviously I'd rather see them flying around, but now we're much more aware of conservation and how to study things in the wild, so we don't do this anymore. But I kind of think these collections are important still to help us to understand nature, to understand our environment, and therefore if we understand it, we know how to preserve it and how to protect it. So I kind of see these collections and these resources as somewhere to learn about them, about the natural world, and to help us to look after it for the future. So my favourite in here was this Abyssinian roller, this little beautiful bird here, and they're just the colours and the shape of it, just beautiful, beautiful colours. And I'm sure I've taken pictures of this in other museums as well. So I think I should do something based on this bird. I'd love to paint him. I'm doing a little bit of bird painting at the moment, and he will translate beautifully into needle painting technique, into the needle painting technique. So maybe I'm scared to say we'll do that because there's so much other stuff to do as well, and that'd be quite time consuming, but it would be lovely to do that one day, to paint him and to study him and to translate him into embroidery. So it was just a quick visit to Cambridge. So 2 museums, an exhibition, sit down by the river, have a little walk around. We visited the art shop as well, amazing art shop in Cambridge. So always have to pop in there. So just a really wonderful weekend of exploration and looking at something that maybe I wouldn't look at normally. So I guess my idea of this video is just to say, have a little look and see where else you can get some inspiration from. So if you don't have access to museums locally, you can't get out and about maybe, then there are lots of resources online. Do go and check out this video up here. I introduce you to some of them, and you can look at them from the comfort of your own home and find lots of really inspiring things there. If you've enjoyed this little chit chat, do give it a thumbs up as always, and I'll see you next time.